Well, Benjamin Netanyahu is, maybe best understood as an American neoconservative. His formative years were here in the United States. He was raised in Philadelphia. Um, I've heard that when he gets angry and he shouts, he switches to English. So um, he's deeply embedded in the American neoconservative movement, which seeks, to project total power and have a single unipolar world order enforced at the barrel of the American military and its full force. Um, he is now the longest serving prime minister in Israeli history. He surpassed David Ben Gurion 1 or 2 years ago. So he is the quintessential Israeli prime minister. He markets himself to the Israeli public as the one most adept at manipulating the American political system to Israel's advantage. Um, so he's a very dangerous Machiavellian figure who will do anything to stay in power. Now, he has been embroiled in scandals in Israel, not because of his war crimes, of course, over the years, but because of corruption, where, for example, he was giving sweetheart contracts for telecommunication in the telecommunications industry to like family members of his. I mean, I'm trying. The details for me are a little. I can't remember all of them at the moment. There was the most actually striking one to me was that he bought from Germany. He bought I think it was five nuclear weapons capable submarines when he was only authorized by the Israeli military to buy two, and it turns out that his cousin was the representative of ThyssenKrupp, the German company that manufactured those submarines. So it's not only about the purchase; it's about the maintenance of these submarines, which is billions and billions of dollars. So that's one of the issues. In fact, in the Israeli protests against him, you can see people carrying like big mock submarines. So and ThyssenKrupp, I should say, where that's a Thyssen and Krupp were the two companies that were the backbone of the Nazi war machine, that were reconstituted into a single company in the decades following World War II and the Holocaust, and that's who, ironically, Israel it buys its nuclear weapons capable submarines from. So, in order to avoid prosecution for these crimes, for his corruption, he turned to the ultra right wing, what is known as basically the Kahanist movement, named for Rabbi Meir Kahana, who is kind of the patron saint of the ultra right in Israel. He was He was an Israeli. He was from Brooklyn, and he was kind of an uh, um, he was just an overt racist who agitated in New York against black populations, and worked for the FBI. In fact, snitching on anti-war Vietnam War protesters, and then he brought his brand to Israel, where he became kind of a rabble rouser and was seen as a threat to the political establishment. So he was, after being elected as a into the Knesset, his party was eventually banned. Now, um, after his party was banned, he um, his political work and his legacy, and then his assassination, his acolytes continued to grow his basically his ideology. And as Israel shifted further and further to the right, it became that ideology of total expulsion of all Palestinians, of all non-Jews from the land of Israel, became more and more popular. Where now, you see secular right-wing youth saying Kahana was right, and that's kind of a mainstay of what you hear in Israel today. Kahana was right; he was right. We do have to get rid of the Arabs. So one of his acolytes was a guy named Itamar Ben Gvir, who was part of this terrorist group, what was listed as by the Israeli government and the United States government as a terrorist group. Itamar Ben-Gvir is now the public security minister, the internal security minister in Israel. He's the head of the police. You may have seen videos of him handing out rifles to settlers in the West Bank to go use to carry out pogroms against Palestinians. Where this is another aspect of the horrors that are unfolding now that is not getting talked about enough, is that the pogroms that are happening in the West Bank under the cover of this war on Gaza. So when it was election season, Netanyahu went to Itamar Ben-Gvir and his party called the Jewish Power Party, and made a deal with him and then another at that time recently formed party called Religious Zionism, and basically made a deal with them and said, we can make a coalition and form a government if you guarantee me legal immunity so I'm not prosecuted for these crimes. And that's exactly what he did. So he brought these fanatics into power in order to protect himself. And now they're all running the show together. So you have a completely eliminationist, even apocalyptic right wing governing the country. And after the October 7th attack, the long-term debate in Israel between the left and the right, the left believing we just maintain permanent apartheid, the Palestinians stay in their refugee camps, and if they rise up or carry out anything we don't like, then we use our military force to go beat them down, teach them a lesson, mow the lawn, as they call it. And then that's been the status quo. The right wing says, no, we need to expel them, exterminate them, get rid of every single last one, because this is our land. God gave it to us. There's the theological justification, and then there's also the, how can you have someone who's your mortal enemy, your bitter enemy, living so close to you? And so their logic is actually more clear cut. It actually it has a straighter logic than just a permanent contradiction of they stay over there and we're over here, and there's going to be fighting. So what happened on October 7th is that permanent apartheid status quo idea was totally discredited. And so now we see pretty much the entire country lined up behind the eliminationist right wing of Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich and Benjamin Netanyahu, who are saying, no, we have to get rid of all of them. Now, in the Israeli public, Netanyahu is the most hated man. He's the most hated man in Israel, for one thing, because of his corruption, and secondly, because, of course, he failed to prevent October 7th from happening. So as long as this war on Gaza goes on, he's protected, because the Israeli public is busy, thinking about Gaza, the hostages, how we're going to kill them, all the Palestinians, and expel them into the Sinai. But as soon as that stops, as soon as there's a ceasefire, they're going to come for Netanyahu. The Israeli public is going to come for him. And, who knows what's going to happen. His political career could be totally finished. So he has every reason to keep this war going simply for his personal, political expediency. So, I mean, that's basically where things are. And that is Benjamin Netanyahu, who, will commit genocide in order to protect his political career.